The Switch has apparently sold more than what a lot of people were thinking it sold overall in its first 28 days in March. Apparently it's at least shipped. Now, their wording is kind of weird in their fiscal report. I was going through it and reading it to make sure. It's a little weird. It seems like the 2.74 million are shipped and not necessarily sold through to consumers. It's very hard for them to tell leading up to March 30th how would you know those are actually sold through to customers. You know what you've shipped though, so we know that 2.74 million have left their factories by the end of March, which by the way they're selling, we can pretty much understand these have probably sold by now. The 2.74 million, which is up from their original 2 million promise, that's a pretty good launch, I think. I don't know what you guys think about that, but I think they are in a really good spot right now with their Nintendo Switch system.
It's record-breaking for sure. I mean, you're actually quite right. It is shipped, which is important to like. I read it as well, because every time you see one of those random websites talk about sales, they go 2.7 was sold. It's like, yeah,
random dude. Yeah. Kotaku, Polygon. I had to read through the articles, check. They say those are sold numbers, and I had to say in my video these are shipped numbers. Yeah. It's still good, but those are shipped. So keep that in mind. Yep, go on. Sorry.
Shipped. So like basically the way it works is when you have it shipped, you're shipping to like stores and everything, and we know they're selling out, right? So we assume that means it's sell through, but we don't know that. All we know is that they've shipped. Which, by the way, that's a big deal. Being able to ship that many that quick is a record-breaking thing for Nintendo to begin with, and we know within the first month or 2 or 3 that they're probably going to keep selling through them all the way through. So that's a big deal. What interests me though is originally they said they were only going to ship 2 million out. So how did they change that? Why did they change that? And
there's a couple things. I think I think there's a couple ways they could have done this. One, they told us, what was it, like the beginning of the month, that they were going to beginning of March, that they were going to up production quickly, and then the NES gets discontinued. The NES Classic, which they had to have planned that out months ago, like when it was going to be, or at least a month ago, at least when it was going to be discontinued, because I don't think they walk in the boardroom and just cut it down and then the factory line stops with all these extra parts. They know that it's coming to an end. Really, that's the only other thing I could think of. They must have, or just rented out more factory space. I mean, that's all I can assume. But I mean, they did it. So there's that. You don't lie to your investors at this point. So we know they at least did 2 point. It's not like we're reading off of Media Creates or MPD and hoping they're right. It's straight up from to the investors. So that's a good question, how they would have done that. More factory space. That's all I can assume. I mean, they even say with their NES Classic, we're looking towards the future and what's going to do better for us, which I've told people several times, NES Classic, there's not a big future for that system because you're not selling games. You're barely selling accessories. You're not selling expensive accessories. I mean, what, an $80 pair of Joy-Cons compared to a $10 NES controller? What's going to make Nintendo more money there? And it's the games, the upsell value, the licensing, none of that exists in bulk on the NES Classic. So it makes sense to get rid of that and maybe open up more floor space for Switches being pumped out at extreme rates. That's all.
Well, now we know they were doing the 2DS at the same time, so it's like they had all that planned at the same time. So
Yep, more upsell value there too compared to the NES Classic. So a lot of it makes sense to kick the NES Classic out at this time. Of course, we didn't know about the 2DS XL when they canceled it. We had to wait a week and a half or so to 2 weeks to figure that out. But it makes sense because the NES Classic was good for brand awareness and I think even promotion of their brand leading up to the Switch launch before they had to kick that out. So that makes sense. But did you have more stuff you wanted to say, Shane, about the launch numbers for the Switch before I cut you off?
Well, I'm excited to see that they're that big, actually, because everyone was expecting 2 million. Like that was the idea there. That's how much they're going to go. So to see more, to see more than what everyone was expecting is great news. And I'm really hoping that they're able to keep that consistency going because we're now going into uncharted waters, right? Like the farther we go out there.
Third month, yep. Yeah. Third month is that was a downer for the Wii U. They're very fortunate right now to have Mario Kart. Very fortunate. They did not have this with the Wii U. And that's going to help because Mario Kart, as much as people don't want to tell me it doesn't sell, Mario Kart had probably one of the biggest attach rates next to what we know as Zelda, obviously now, which somehow had over 100% attach rate. I don't know how that's even possible, but Mario Kart sold 8 million on a unit like the Wii U that had 13 million people. So Mario Kart is strong. But what were you saying, Shane? Sorry.
Well, the Zelda 100% attach, like 110, 105% attach
ridiculous,
rate.
Yeah.
It is crazy. as far as I'm to understand, it's not only the Wii U version, right? It's actually people that bought the Switch version bought like the special edition, kept it there, then bought another version for them to play. Now, I think that, and I don't really want to make this like kind of prediction this way, but when you have 100% sell rate, that means that when anyone buys a Switch, they buy that Zelda game. That means when that Zelda game gets to its peak in sales, then the interest of the entire console itself is probably going to fall through because it's just 1-to-1. People are now buying this console to play that specific game, so that's the attachment to that system. Once you've reached the top of the best-selling Zelda game, that's like 8.4 million or something like that. I think that's
Twilight. It's high, yeah.
Yeah. So once you've hit that 8.4 million, then you have to start relying on other, and maybe it sells more than that. Let's just say 10 million.
Sure.
You know, it can keep selling more. But once you've hit that ceiling, then you need to start focusing on other games that bring people in. So you've got Splatoon 2, you got Mario Kart, and there's a lot of people out there that are rebuying Mario Kart, having bought it on the Wii U, and there's a whole bunch of people like Philip, you said that you skipped out on the Wii U version, and you're going to get, Then honestly, I think a lot of people that skipped on the Wii U version, this is a great way to play it because it's now a portable video game version of this amazing game that runs even better than it did.
And everything's unlocked. You don't have to spend time unlocking stuff.
So I think there's like a lot there that can happen, but without that third-party support, you know, without any of that really coming into its own, I think that the Switch is going to struggle as we go farther out with games that. I mean, I've played Splatoon 2 way early on, and I didn't get to play too much of it, but what I played of it reminded me exactly like Splatoon 1. What I played in Mario Kart was exactly like the older Mario Kart, and those Wii U buyers that are coming in, they already know what they're going to get, and maybe some new people are going to come in and get some new stuff, but I think largely, unless they start seeing like Grand Theft Auto 5 or Red Dead Redemption 2 or Call of Duty, you're going to start to see people not flocking to the system. And maybe the first year might be okay, but after that time period, you know, they said they're going to be announcing a whole bunch of new games because they said that they have games in development. But I don't care what Nintendo has in development, totally. What I care more about is who they're working with to get more games on their system.
That's fair. Yeah, I'll be curious because GTA 5 can run fine on the Switch. I'll be very curious to see if they bring that over and work with Rockstar because that's been a very rocky relationship, which is odd because Nintendo was all for things like Manhunt 2 to come over to the Wii, and then we really haven't seen a lot of work done with them really since then, really. I mean, GTA 5 is still ridiculous on the charts whenever it comes to selling, and I mean, GTA 5 on the Switch, I don't know about anyone else, but I would play through that game again on the Switch, or if I didn't have a Switch and I was a Nintendo fan, I would go get the Switch for GTA 5 because it is a really good game, and if you can play it portably, that kind of opens some doors on the game itself, you know. So I think that would be good for the Switch, and I was a little shocked to see something like Payday 2 get announced, and I feel like more announcements like that may follow at E3, but I at least want to give Nintendo E3 before I say, you know, they need third-party support now because we all know E3 is like there's games being announced like a mile a minute on there.
Well, the reason why I think we need to hear it kind of happening now is just simply because by E3, if they announce new games, we might not see those games for another year, another 2 years in advance. We needed to start hearing these announcements of third-party game support earlier on. We needed, like when they announced Red Dead Redemption 2, it said future Nintendo console underneath it or something like that. We needed those announcements. They could be coming out with these amazing Nintendo games because I don't think anyone can disagree. The Wii U had one of the best, I would argue the best first party games of all the systems that came out last generation. Or
I would say so. They had some really good ones. Yeah, no, I would say so. They had some great games. I mean, I was a big at the time. I will say this: are we talking about PS4, Xbox? Because the Wii U kind of falls in that weird, you know, time period.
I'd say PS4, Xbox One,
PS4, Xbox One, okay, yeah. So, yeah, I would say so, too. Looking down and up and down the line, those are, the PS4 and the Xbox One is a weird generation where games are almost changing sides, you know, timed exclusives here, timed exclusives there. The PS4 just recently started picking up games as PS4 games, you know, with Neo and Nier and all these games coming out specifically for the PS4 first, we assume, or maybe altogether. But let me jump over to Philip about the sales. Did you get a chance to look at some of the sales numbers and stuff, Philip?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, 2.7 million. That's huge, and I actually didn't know that it was also shipped numbers, but that does make sense. But I also think that, I mean, it's so obviously it's almost impossible to find a Switch anywhere you look.
It is. I will say, the other day when Mario Kart came out, I was getting a lot of reports about Best Buys having 20 to 30 of them. I didn't go out and check myself, but there were a lot of people posting and taking pictures on Twitter of their local Best Buy having several of them, but they sold out. So
on Thursday, actually for the charity stream, went out to get a bunch of gear that ended up completely failing on me anyway. I went. I got a bunch of a camera that ended up not working. That's a whole nother story for a different podcast. Yeah. I set it up all on my PC and then had to, like 5 minutes before I went on, switch back to my MacBook Pro to stream.
Oh, was it a webcam?
Yeah, it was terrible. Okay. It was a webcam and it was a lot more problems than that. Sure. But I was at Best Buy and I saw, like, when I went to go pay for my stuff, I saw like literally what looked like at least 25 to 30 Switches back there. And I'm like, are those for sale? And the guy's like, oh, tomorrow you can grab a ticket and then go wait in that line outside. And there was literally like already, and this was like right before they closed, I think at 8:30 or something like that at night. There's already like 10 people waiting outside, you know, with tickets. So, I mean, the demand is still there, you know, like people are really still excited about it. So I don't know. I mean, I honestly think that that it's selling well, and I think that what's the like, I mean, it's obviously not gonna beat the PS4 in as far as console sales are concerned.
Not lifetime. In Japan, the Switch will beat the PS4 in Japan. I don't think anyone's doubting that with the numbers that are going up right now. And the PS4 has kind of slowed, almost not to a crawl, but definitely like a slow jog, if you want to give it that kind of analogy, in Japan. And the other problem is in Japan, they have pretty much started to give up on the traditional home console where they are sitting in their living room playing, you know, a system, whereas the Switch is definitely built for Japan first and then the rest of the world second, because they are all about portability in Japan. And I do think it will beat it there. I don't know if it'll ever reach it lifetime, because the PS4 right now, we're all trying to figure out if it's going to get the PS2 numbers, which it won't, but that's what we're trying to figure out now. And if you're ever comparing yourself to PS2 numbers, you're doing really well. I mean, obviously 155 million sold is insane, but we'll never be at that time period again where tablets, cell phones, all these other forms of media existed, and the PS2 really was in a good time at a good place, giving people the ability to do DVDs, but still not costing Sony an arm and a leg like the PS3 did. So it's just not, I just don't see the sales getting there. I do think, though, it will pass the Wii U very quickly, and you might be surprised because 2.74 million in their first 28 days is a little too close, I think, for Microsoft for their first month and a half with the Xbox One in holiday numbers, which was 3 million. So keep that in mind. PS4 was 4.2 million, by the way, first month and a half during holiday season. I have no idea how you can release a console right now and get to those numbers that Nintendo is. It's hard to believe.
Right. And I'm sure that, you know, third parties, to go off of what Shane was talking about earlier, as far as third-party interest is concerned, I think that it's going to be really hard for them to ignore that, you know? And I do think that we will see a lot, you know, and I've said this plenty of times before, but I really truly believe that we will see a lot of great announcements coming from other third parties. Like, we know now that Nintendo isn't really going to have a stage or a big showing at E3, they announced. Is that what they said? So, like, you know, possibly we'll see on the Ubisoft stage, and when they announce the new Assassin's Creed that's going to be announced, like, you know, they'll have the little Switch logo right there quietly about it, you know? So I don't know, like, I'm just, or I mean, obviously there'll be a bigger deal made about it, but I do think that third-party interest is coming. I do think we're going to see it on the stages of other third parties more so than on Nintendo stage there themselves for whatever they do with their announcements. I think they're going to save that stuff for the Metroid or whatever. Or Luigi Mansion or whatever it is that, you know, we want to see. Virtual Console, obviously. But yeah, I don't know, like, I'm really excited about it, and it's great to see that so much interest is coming back into Nintendo system, so much so that they're confident enough to bring out another system right after, you know, like, their Switch is selling so well, you know, brave enough to do something like that, which I don't think any other one of these companies like Sony or Microsoft would be willing to do something like that. But I also wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like, you know, the SNES Mini coming out later this year as well. You know, and maybe that'll be even crazier. Like maybe they'll try and outdo themselves, and in order to avoid something like what the problem was with the NES, they'll be able to make that something like a little virtual console system where you'll just be able to have virtual console on that, like it's a little Roku, or I mean a little Amazon or something like that, Apple TV. Who knows? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see anything come from Nintendo
Evan,
at this point.
I want to give you a chance, Evan, to weigh in on the Switch sales.
I mean,
your thoughts there.
I mean, most of the overall thoughts have already been stated. It's sales numbers, it's shipping numbers, it's something we're used to, I guess, from you and me being part of a store. But yeah, the numbers were impressive for the non-holiday, so that's pretty cool. But again, it is game driven, as was stated. So we'll have to see what happens after E3, really, to see if it keeps going. I mean,
E3 is
basically
key.
it.